Hi, friend. Happy Wednesday. So great to see you. I've missed you. I missed you last week because I was up in New York dealing with board meeting stuff, which was fun, but still work. And I miss seeing you. So I'm glad that we're back here together today. If you are new here, welcome. Pull up a seat. Come on in. The caffeine is warm and the conversation is always great. So say hello in the chat. You can join Giacomo and Aaron and Shelby and me and Jim and Jeff and just a lot of other smart, talented, wonderful people. So if you haven't already, lean forward, type a little something. If you're too scared to type, maybe throw an emoji. I don't know. Or you can sit back and relax and not do anything. But I just don't think that is as fun. If you cannot type in or throw in an emoji because you are listening to this on your favorite podcast network while you fold the laundry or do the dishes or walk the dog, never fear, because you too are part of this conversation. Because even though you are doing those chores, I want you to lean in and really think about how today's topic area can affect your life and what things that you can take away from it. As always, there'll be notes on my website afterwards so that you can get anything that you might have missed. Big hi to Athena and Nicholas and Ira and some new people that we have joining us, which we always love to see. So I have a confession. As you know, today we were supposed to talk to Amy Brann. And I say supposed to because we got an email very late last night that Amy is sick and could not be on with us live today. I even wrote back and said, is it like sick as in you're throwing up or sick as in you're like coughing? Because like, I actually don't mind if you're coughing in the mic, but it was sick. It was sick, like she could not join us. And so I know the last time she was supposed to join us, she also had something come up. So I really got together with Shelby and we sort of circled the wagons and we're like, okay, obviously we have two choices here. We can cancel or, the show can go on with the subject area that we have already, gotten into and deep dove and looked at questions and really, had come up with like thoughtful conversation starters about. And so I thought it was sort of ironic that today's conversation was all about change and all about dealing with new things that come your way, that I was like, okay, well, my first instinct is like, okay, just cancel, just like cancel because I don't want people to be disappointed that Amy's not here. And then I actually thought to myself, like, I was like using Amy's technique of like, okay, my brain's, instead of just going with what my brain's default is, which is just like, okay, default cancel, let's take a step back and think what are some other possible alternatives? So that's when I came up with, again, emailing her team and being like, can she come on even if she's coughing? Or, can we, figure out a way for her to answer them via video or voice note even, which, is still a possibility, not for today, but for later on. And then the third possibility was like, well, we've gotten into the nitty gritty of the subject area that Amy was going to talk to us about. And so I was like, well, why not just take a dive in there and talk about that together? And so that's where we landed. I agree, Jim. Amy has some nerve getting sick. The end of the year, we just don't want people to be getting sick. You can't be getting coughs and sick tummies, with 6 weeks left to go. It's just like, we're in the red zone. You got to take it all the way. No more of this sick. No more calling out sick. Okay. I agree, James. I hope she gets well soon. And I hope that we all stay well. But for Lokesh and some people that are joining us from India or other places, I hope you will stay on with us, even though Amy's not here, because we are going to dig in deep to the exact topics that we are going to talk about with Amy. We're basically going to have the same conversation, only Amy's not going to be here to add in her expert opinion, which, arguably is important. But we've read all the books. that she's written, and we've kind of gotten into the subject area. So I think, as Jeff said, we're going to train our brain to just rethink this situation. And so how I kind of thought about it is I picked, obviously, Amy has a huge breadth of different topic areas that she's talked about and different ways, as Ryan's saying, that you can handle change. And so what I did is I distilled kind of how I was going to talk about it with Amy. Well, I can kind of let you behind the curtains here, because this is how I do it every week. I deep dive, I go down the rabbit hole of the guests that we're going to bring on every Wednesday. And then what I do is I try to think about like, okay, I try to think about it in two parts. What is sort of like the work part of this, the career part? Like, so whatever that person is the expert in, like where can that show up in the workplace? And then I do something that I think not as many people do, which is I also try to think about it just like in life, personal relationships, family situations, because I think so much of what the tactics that we sometimes apply to work actually can leak into life in a really great sort of like interesting, nuanced way. So when I was deep diving into Amy's stuff, I was thinking about like, okay, how do we look at it from a work perspective? How do we look at it from a personal life perspective? I came up with like 4 or 5 sort of like subject areas that I really wanted to dig into with her, that I felt like were the most common, that sort of spread across work and life in a seamless way. And so that's what we're going to dive into today, is these kind of 5 subject areas that I came up with. And as Jeff is saying, first off, resilience. Exactly. That's the first one. If you have questions, I should add, because you might be new here, you don't have to wait till the end. This is not a wait till the end type of conversation. Lean in, type them. Let's talk about them. Not only will I share what I think, but again, lots of smart people in the chat, Elizabeth and Jeff and Shelby and Jim and Rich and other people might jump in as well to help you, answer that question or get a new perspective on something that you might be dealing with. So all that to say, sharing is caring. Participation is welcome. And don't feel like you have to like wait till the end or, pull your hands in and, oh, everybody else is talking, so I don't want to talk. No, we're all sitting at the same coffee shop. We're all sitting at the same lunch table. We can all join in the conversation. So one of the things that I was really, really excited to talk to Amy about, but really excited to dig in now with you, was this concept of multitasking. And I think it's something that so resonates, especially now when we get into like the last 6 weeks of the year, where people's brains start to be like, okay, I have family coming into town for Hanukkah, and I have to deal with the kids and they're at the end of school, and also work and evaluations. And do I actually want to get a new job in the new year? Or do I want to get that raise or that promotion? What does that look like? I think sometimes we get a little bit like squirrel, like, our brains are just kind of bouncing from one thing to another, which is not necessarily bad. I think it's just kind of naturally how our brains work. But I think what happens is we end up overwhelmed, because there's just like a lot going on all at once. So we end up overwhelmed. We end up overstimulated. So because we have all of these things, we kind of end up sort of like deer in the headlights, completely overstimulated. And that we're juggling so much, that all these different things, that sort of the overload becomes reactive instead of something that is adaptable, something that you yourself are saying, okay, like how do we kind of get into the weeds a little bit more? And so one of the things that I always love testing, and this actually came from a LinkedIn learning instructor, Dave Crenshaw, when I watched his course, one of his courses years ago, he talks about this, or maybe it was in his book. Either way, when people would talk about multitasking and how it was like overstimulating or overloading you, I was the person, and I don't know if you've ever related to this, but I was the person that was like, oh, well, that's not me. Like, I'm amazing at multitasking. Like, I am just a wizard. And he had this exercise that when I did it, I was like, oof, I'm going to offer this exercise to you. if you are the type of person, or if you know the type of person in your life that they look at multitasking as like a badge of honor, I'm great at multitasking. I can have a conference call while picking up the kids, while organizing, the nanny schedule for the week, or, whatever it is. This exercise really opened my eyes. And this is what you're going to do. You're going to get your phone or some way to time yourself. And what you're going to do is you are going to write out on a piece of paper the numbers 1 through 26. So literally 1, 2, with a paper and pen, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 26. And you're going to time yourself. And then once you're done with number 26, so again, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 26, you're going to come back to the number 1 and you're going to write out the alphabet, A, B, C, D. I don't have to sing it to you. Hopefully you know how that goes. You're gonna write it out, A through Z, and you're gonna time yourself. So you press go when you start with number 1. When you get to Z, you press stop. And so I did this exercise. I set my timer. Okay, 1 to all the way to Z. Then, okay, so you keep that number. You write down that number, whatever it is, 36 seconds or whatever you get. Then what you're going to do, same piece of paper, you're going to go down, and what you're going to do is you're going to do it A1, B2, C3. So you're going to end up doing the full 1 through 26 on the top, and you're going to end up doing A through Z on the bottom, but you're going to go back and forth. So again, you're going to be multitasking. 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5, and you're going to time yourself. Talk about having a slice of humble pie. You're going to see really quickly that your whole I'm amazing at switch tasking. Not so much. Your score, I can almost guarantee it, without being a fortune teller, I can almost guarantee it will be worse when you do that second exercise. Almost consistently. And it's because your brain, similar to a child who can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can think very quickly when you're in the same train of thought. And when you're having to switch, even if it's half a nanosecond or something like that, your brain is actively having to okay, we're turning off the numbers and we're going into letters. Okay, now we're turning off the letters and we're going into numbers. And even though that might be a split second, those split seconds over the course of the 1 through 26, it really adds up. And so when you think about multitasking, you can actually physically see it doesn't work. Your brain actually doesn't work as well that way. And so Amy really goes into a couple things that I think could really help us in this season of okay, there's 6 weeks left in the year. Our brains are going to want to go to multitasking. But as we just saw in this exercise, which I encourage you to do, they don't work as well. This is what you're going to do. So here are some 2 or 3 super actionable tips. You can literally start doing these today, this afternoon. Number 1, when you go into a meeting or when you go to do something that requires focus, our phone's biggest culprit of this. We are going to silence all notifications during meetings. And if you feel like you still can't silence it, we're going to put our phones screen side down. Or on our computers, we are going to disable the pop-ups that show text message or Instagram or whatever it is. We're going to disable all the notifications within our vision point during meetings. Non-negotiable. Second thing, instantly actionable that you can do is something called I always end up saying this wrong, Pomodoro method. I think I said it right that time, Pomodoro method. But it is this method of working where you set a timer for 20 minutes of really focusing on something, and then you get 5 minutes of the wiggles and jiggles. And then you can get up and get a snack and do jumping jacks or whatever. But it's kind of telling yourself, okay, for 20 minutes, kind of time out a little bit, if you will, a little adult time out for you. 20 minutes, we're going to really focus on whatever that is. We're going to really focus on this email. We're really going to focus on updating our resume. We're really going to focus on updating our LinkedIn. Whatever task is in front of you that requires focus, you're going to say to yourself, not, oh, I have to sit here for an hour, because again, that's when our brain starts to look for those little like squirrel opportunities. You're just going to say 20 minutes. I have to focus on this one thing for 20 minutes. Then I can get my wiggles and my giggles out. But for those 20 minutes, I have to stop and I have to focus. I think that this is something that you can, again, really, you could start it this afternoon. If this afternoon is too intimidating, maybe start it towards the end of the week. But what it can really do is it gives your brain this like single task sprint. So going back to like the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it just allows your brain to really get in the groove and say, okay, I'm going to be able to do this alphabet really fast because we're just doing the alphabet for 20 minutes. So it just resets your brain's ability to see what's going on and then to also spot change. So again, I really just think that this sort of like 20-minute focus sprint with your notifications off can truly help you kind of beat back the multitasking urge that we all have. I love this point by Ryan, who says our brains seek resolution and we remember unfinished or interrupted tasks more than others. So we have many open loops in our head. Our brains continue to spin and spin. I absolutely love this, Ryan. And I feel like this is something that we all struggle with. I really love the sort of visual of, in fact, I was just telling this to somebody at lunch yesterday. I think of my brain as a computer screen, as an open browser in Google or Safari or Chrome. And when that screen starts to have too many tabs open, what happens to all of us, by the way, when we have too many tabs going on our computer? One, our computer looks like a mess. And for a lot of us, the computer starts running slower. Put in the chat, like either raise your hand or write the word yes in the chat. If your computer, if you've ever gotten what I call the spinny wheel of death. That's not an official name, but that's what I call it. And it's usually happens when I have too many programs running on my computer at one time. Lo and behold, what starts to come is what I lovingly call the spinny wheel of death. And that is that rainbow. Mine's a rainbow. I don't know what yours looks like. Mine's a rainbow and it spins around and around and around and my computer will not work. It will not let me click on things. It's thinking too much. It's become overloaded in its thinking capacity. And so I think of our brains like that. So to Ryan's point, when you have so many tabs open in your brain, those unfinished tasks, you keep coming back to those unfinished tasks because in your head, you're like, I have 57 tabs open. Like, how am I, what am I doing with these 57 tabs? Like, what are we doing with all of these open tabs here? And how are we dealing with them? And then again, that's when our initial urge of like multitasking comes into play, which again, we just talked about some strategies to help push that a little farther away. That really kind of saying, okay, I'm going to close out these 57 tabs, as James is saying, by focusing on one at a time. Because what happens when your brain is super cluttered is that you miss cues. You're reading people, you're reading the room in the sales meeting or whatever. You start missing cues that people are sending you, both verbal and non-verbal. You start to forget conversations or forget parts of conversations. Again, raise your hand. I know this is true of me. When I first meet someone, they will shake my hand. I don't know how to do that without looking weird. They'll say like, hi, I'm Susan. I'm so focused on like, okay, what does her name tag say? Okay, my friend Amy just introduced me. I I've already forgot her name is Susan because done. She literally just said it. Nothing's registering. Susan in one ear, out the other. I got nothing. I then spend the rest of the 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long I'm talking to the person desperately trying to get their name again in like a subtle way without saying, I've already forgotten your name. You know, I have the memory of a gnat because I'm too busy thinking about what I'm going to say next that then I miss things. So again, that's just an example for me of what happens when I have too many tabs open in my brain, or we sort of default to autopilot without really thinking. So I think another thing that Amy talks about that is really, as Athena said, her name is blah, 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 blah. That is exactly what happens in my brain because I was too busy thinking about like, you know, what am I going to say? And if she asks me what I do, how do I end? Like, too many tabs open. My brain has moved on to other matters. Amy talks a lot about really hyper focusing on decluttering your brain by externalizing everything. So her sort of thesis on like the too many tabs open in your brain is that is the crux of where the problem is. Your brain. Everything is being held in your mind. And her sort of anecdote to that is, in a perfect world, nothing is held in your mind. Your mind is like a clear oasis on a beautiful day. And instead, all of that information is external. So all of that information is, you know, in a list, you know, it's in a to-do list, or maybe it's in the notes app of your phone, or maybe it's in a project management system like a Notion or an Asana or an Evernote. Maybe it's in a shared doc with your team. You know, it's in a shared doc, or again, not just your team, but your family. You know, here's what to do on a Wednesday night. The trash has to be taken out. The dog needs to go for a walk. You know, again, out of your head and into somewhere else. A shared doc, a list, a meeting agenda. That's a big one that Amy talks about. So a lot of times we're thinking about like, okay, when I go into the sales meeting, I need to remember to ask John about this, and I need to tell Jeff that this needs to be done by Wednesday. Again, your brain, in an ideal world, not the place for that information. It needs to live somewhere external. And the minute it, again, like a computer, the minute it kind of gets downloaded elsewhere, it frees up this mental bandwidth that allows you to adapt more quickly and allows you to process more quickly. Because again, we didn't have, instead of having 57 tabs open in our mind, now we've reduced that down to 5. By the way, Amy has this theory that like you can get to 0. I was going to talk to her about this. I just don't know if that's possible. I mean, I think if you had enough post-it notes and shared documents and whatever, but like, I just can never get to 0. There's always 1 or 2 lurkers that before I go to bed at night or in the shower or in the morning when I'm waking up, like they're percolating. They're just, I can't shut the tabs. I don't know. I was going to ask Amy, like, how do I get those last 2 tabs to shut? Haven't figured out, and Amy's not here. So we're going to go with my answer, which is I think you're always going to have 2 or 3 tabs that never shut. But, you know, that's just me. I want to cover this question from Samia, because I think I'm saying your name right. If I'm not, tell me. Samia, how to stop thinking the same way. So for example, how to stop having the same negative thoughts over and over and over again. So Amy does talk about this a lot, and she talks about how stress, again, like that stress of like the negative thoughts, let's say, or just negative feelings in general that are playing in a loop in your mind, that really is stressing out the brain, and that is really clogging, for lack of a better word, your prefrontal cortex, which is sort of like the rational planning part of your brain, and also helps like power the rest of your brain. She really talks about slowing down and pausing as much as possible. So when those negative loops, Samia, start, I'll just make up an example while we're chatting here. Something like, my boss is mad at me because I did the marketing presentation wrong. That is such a dumb example. Whatever. That's all I got. And you're sort of going in a loop and you're like, oh my gosh, my boss is mad. Do you think she's mad? She didn't slack me. She slacked me with no happy face. What does it mean when there's no happy face there? She definitely hates me. She hates me, which means my coworkers hate me. You start to go into this like doom spiral. And Amy's whole thing is don't let that doom spiral and stress sort of like hijack the rest of your mind and like hijack more of your time and effort and energy. So what Amy really focuses on is using micro switches to keep the brain regulated. So what is a micro switch? A micro switch is something like a 60-second pause before you say the next thing or do the next thing. So again, if 60 seconds, if you can't visualize that, again, get out your timer again on your phone. And when the doom spiral starts, for 60 seconds, you're going to cut it off, stop the spiral. Amy doesn't really say what you should think about. I don't know, maybe go to your favorite park in your mind, or your favorite place, or your favorite beach, or your favorite stream, or your favorite river. They say that water is very wonderful for humans and does a lot for the sound of the water in your brain. So I would go somewhere water-filled in your mind, but a 60-second pause. Then Amy recommends 3 slow breaths. So in through the nose, out through the mouth. You do that 3 times. And then the last thing that Amy suggests is you say to yourself, what matters most right now? Because then what that does in your mind is, instead of having this sort of like uncertainty and stress, like, are these people mad at me? Is my coworker now mad at me? Everybody hates me. By kind of recentering and saying what matters most right now, it makes the uncertainty instead feel like an opportunity. So it's not so much a threat. It's more of a reset of, okay, what actually matters right now? And go from there. And by the way, that might be what matters right now, is finding out, is my boss in a good spot with me? And that might be as simple as walking over to their desk or sending them a Slack or sending them an email and saying, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Here's what I'm focused on today, or whatever it is. So I think that kind of piece of advice from Amy is super helpful, of just stop, 60-second break, go to the beach in your mind, 3 slow breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then the question of what matters most right now. What matters most right now? And really looking at that as an opportunity to reset and not continue a doom spiral. I love this point from Scott. Scott, I love this. Scott says, I've been a huge fan of using Siri to dictate thoughts down. It helps me capture them, and I know I'll come back to them, letting me move on in the moment. Such a good way to, again, stop that stress spiral in your brain, or empty out your brain from that cognitive overload, that sort of like mind decluttering, so that you are able to really sink in and deal with what's in front of you. I love that. I also love this recommendation from Ryan. If anyone is looking for a book that helps explain this problem, I recommend The Distracted Mind, Ancient Brains in a High-Tech World. This goes without saying. I probably should have said this at the beginning of the talk. If you have resources, if you have a podcast, if you have a book, if you have a newsletter that you thought to yourself, wow, that was so helpful for me, be like Ryan, okay? And share it with everybody else. Because obviously Ryan read this book, The Distracted Mind, Ancient Brains in a High-Tech World, and now Ryan is sharing that, because sharing is caring. So if you have read something or seen something or listened to something that is helpful when it comes to rewiring your brain, when it comes to dealing with change in your brain, I'll share one. It's pretty basic and a lot of people have heard of it, but it's an oldie and a goodie, and I'll share it again here. James Clear, Atomic Habits. I know everybody's read the book. Everybody's sick of the book. I know. We're all sick of it, but it is a good book. It is worth a reread every, year or two as a little tune up when it comes to forming good habits, rewiring your brain, and really kind of digging into what that habit forming process can look like for you. Another thing that I was really excited to dig into about today is really kind of why our brains hate change so much. So again, if you're like me, you might drive the same route to work every day. You drive the same streets, the same way every single time. When you go to a restaurant that you've been to a bunch, instead of trying something new, you order the same turkey club. Yep, same turkey club every time you go. You never try that new lasagna. You never try the ham and cheese sandwich. Why would you do that when you know the turkey club is good and you've had it before? And these are all real examples and they hit home to me. So hopefully they hit home to you too. Or if it's a specific brand. So you've been buying the same laundry detergent for God knows how long. But there can be a deal, by the way, on a different laundry detergent. Your laundry detergent could be $10 more, but you have been buying Tide for so long. You go in the grocery store and without even realizing it, you're putting the Tide in your cart. You don't look and see, oh, well, Charmin's there's a coupon that I can get for $3 off. No, you don't even look at the coupon. You buy the same thing. Our brains naturally hate change. And that is also, again, like back to the caveman days, our brains are wired for routine. That helped us, again, back in the caveman days, conserve energy. Like when we were hunter-gatherers, like we knew where the berries were. So we went to the same berry spot and got our berries and came back to our little cave and ate all of our berries. So our brains are wired for routine, for energy conservation. So any sort of deviation from the routine feels threatening. And this can especially happen to teams in a workplace, especially if, if that workplace is chaotic or if that workplace is poorly managed. I don't want to say that you have a bad manager, but if you are in a chaotic, poorly managed workspace. I didn't say it. You thought it. Just saying. And so getting yourself and your team to tolerate change and to not fear it is extremely important, especially in today's era where there's AI and new computer software. Change is inevitable. Change is a coming. So getting your team not just to tolerate change, but to really embrace it, accept it, learn from it is huge. So Amy gives sort of a 5-step approach to dealing with change and overcoming change with teams. And I'm glad that Scott is plugging her course because he helped make it. but Amy has several courses on LinkedIn Learning. They're all great. Definitely check them out. We'll include all the links in the chat and the show notes. But Amy talks about this sort of 5-step approach to really digging into helping your team navigate change. Number 1 seems self-explanatory, which is know your team. Like actually sit down and ask your team about their past experience with change, because people have different ways of dealing with it. So again, for me, I don't deal well with change. So I've had a lot of past experiences where something changed and everything went awry. There are other people, I'll just think of my husband being one, loves change, always orders something new off the menu, loves taking, he just has a different relationship with change than I do. So the first step is to know your team. Ask your team, what is your relationship with change? How do you deal with change? Do you like change? Because again, you might assume everybody on your team thinks the same way you do. So if you love change, you might think, well, everybody loves change. Or if you hate change, you might think, well, everybody hates change. And you can't make assumptions. You have to actually ask the question. So step number 1, get to know your team. Step number 2, you have to start small, itty bitty. Introduce minor but safe uncertainties. So for example, you have a weekly meeting. It's sort of, let's say it's all laid out the same way. 5-minute opener, 10-minute update from the sales team, 10-minute update from the marketing team, 10-minute update from, management, 5 minutes of chit chat at the end, the meeting ends. Let's say that that's like your normal format. Start small, introduce these minor changes that maybe you do a new meeting format. Maybe you have a new way of opening the meeting or a new way of closing the meeting or a new outline. Or if it's not a meeting agenda, maybe it's a brainstorming method. So maybe usually you guys, excuse me, maybe you guys all book a conference room or a Zoom call and you set up an hour and you brainstorm. Maybe you do something different. Maybe you set up 30 minutes at the beginning of the week and 30 minutes at the end of the week, and everybody does the calls instead of sitting at their computer, walking around their house, walking around the office. So again, just little changes, a new brainstorming method, a new meeting format. So step 3, you expose people gently, these small discomforts, these small tweaks in the plan to help them build capacity for change as part of a team unit, as part of a group that is working together. And then what you have to do, step 4, is you have to cultivate reflection. So you have to add this sort of gratitude and lessons learned moments into team meetings. So going back to the example I had of, instead of doing a 1 hour long brainstorm, traditionally maybe do 30 minutes on a Tuesday and 30 minutes on a Thursday. Set up 15 minutes on Friday. And again, we got to talk to other humans. If you're catching a drift, you got to get to know people. Ask your team, what did everybody think about that? Maybe a little piece of gratitude, name one positive thing that you found about changing the format of the meeting. Maybe those 2 extra days between Tuesday and Thursday helped you really marinate on the idea. Whatever it is, kind of reflect on what lessons you learned and what gratitude you have for this new way of doing something. And then lastly, because it's going to happen, you're somewhere in those steps is you're going to get stuck, or somebody on your team is going to get stuck. I hate doing this new way, or I just don't like, I don't like this new way of brainstorming for 30 minutes on a Tuesday and 30 minutes on a Thursday. When stuck, you're going to want to say, as an individual, and again to the group, you're going to say, what are 3 different ways that we could do this? So again, somebody came up with the idea to do 30 minutes on a Tuesday and 30 minutes on a Thursday. your job, if you're feeling stuck, or your team, if other people on the team are feeling that way, come up with 3 other different ideas. So maybe you have an idea that you do an hour on a Monday and then you do 15 minutes on a Friday, or, come up with other ideas as opposed to just defaulting to the like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this, push it away. Like, no, let's dig it. Okay, I understand you don't like it, but then offer 3 other suggestions on how we could do this differently. Like, what does that actually look like? So again, a little something that you can do this week or next week is pick one weekly rhythm at work. Again, maybe it's a meeting agenda. Maybe it's the way you give updates to your team. Maybe it's workflow, and introduce one small change this week or next week. And then ask the team what they learned from it or if they liked it. So that's something that you can do very quickly, very easily, something that is low lift, but again, instantly actionable. You can do that with your team this week without fear, and it will help you get better at managing that change in an impactful way. I missed this question earlier from Giacomo, but I do want us to dig into it. And Giacomo asks, how can you manage and take care of an important change in your personal life that maybe will take months to complete while continuing to build towards a goal that you want to achieve? So again, you want to achieve something, but you also know that maybe something is happening in your personal life, which, by the way, happens to all of us. Maybe it's a sick family member. Maybe it's, in my case, a couple of weeks ago, I got a new dog. And that's been really reworking my life in terms of like, she had an accident upstairs this morning. It set me 30 minutes behind. I was like spiraling on all this stuff. So, what happens when things happen in our personal life? How can we let that not derail us from our bigger goal, our work goal, what that can look like? And by the way, if anybody is here with us that also has any thoughts on this, I would love to hear it, but I'll give you what mine is. And that is really getting help from other people. So again, just getting that outside resource. So maybe that's an accountability partner. Maybe that is somebody in the workplace who can kind of help you pick up the slack because you're dealing with this personal matter. But I think the key unlock to a situation like that is other humans. I think probably so much of us rely on ourselves a lot, which is great. It's a wonderful skill to have, to be self-reliant, to like pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and carry on. But I think what happens a lot is a lot of us don't realize that instead of just carrying a backpack, we're carrying a backpack with about 50 to 60 pounds of rocks all the time. And we're great at it and we can do it, but it's certainly easier when you give 30 pounds of your rocks to somebody else and then you only have a backpack full of 30 pounds of rocks instead of 60 pounds of rocks. I think a lot of us this is a metaphor, by the way. I don't really think everybody's walking around with backpacks and rocks, but the rocks are a metaphor of like, okay, I'll just do this one other thing. And, my partner asked me to do this other thing and my boss asked me to do this thing. And before you know it, your sack of rocks is huge and you got a lot going on. So I think other humans, again, whether those other humans are in the workplace, like a boss or a colleague or a vendor or somebody that you work with that you're close with, or that's in your personal life, it's a friend, it's a coach, it's an accountability partner, it's a spouse, a cousin, whoever that is. I think the key to that is you need other humans to help keep you accountable and keep you moving forward. I think that's really, really key. So again, other people might have some different answers on that. I'm curious what your answers are, but to me, other people are always going to be a massive, massive answer. Brendan's like, give me the rocks. Exactly. Okay. Brendan is volunteering to take all the rocks from all of us. So, or like Jeff is saying, get a coach. I just think that sort of stuff is really, really helpful and very powerful when done correctly. I want to raise up this point and talking about Amy and kind of her theory on even when we don't finish every task, the real win comes from recognizing what still matters, resetting smartly, and starting the next cycle with clarity. If you prioritize early when your brain is fresh and you adjust your to-do list or what it is you have on tap based on what's pending, you honor your capacity so that you don't burn out. Again, so true, especially like Giacomo just said, if you're dealing with a lot of things all at once, both in your personal and your professional life, it is okay if everything is not in order all the time, but sort of resetting and getting clarity and coming back to that is huge. And one of the last things that I was excited to dig into with Amy that you and I can dig into is she really goes deep into this idea of collective competency, of sort of collective competency really being your secret weapon. Because teams, especially in the workplace, they often rely on a few high performers, sort of like, to use an analogy, the David Beckham of the team, the Tom Brady of the team, the Kobe Bryant of the team. You're relying on these like really key high performers to lift everybody else up, which is great. However, in a career, in a workplace, in a business environment, that also means that the knowledge lives in silos. And that can start to get very precarious, especially when there starts to be pressure on the team or the need for adaptability, or that person gets sick, or that person leaves, or that person gets a promotion and is no longer in that role. Then the pressure and the adaptability become a liability. So Amy really talks about building this collective competency and getting your team to gel as a unit, sort of sharing knowledge unilaterally across everybody. And that's not really about avoiding mistakes. It's your team will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. It's about sharing the mistakes and navigating them together. Because if you make a mistake and you learn from it, that's great. But what's even better is when you make a mistake and everybody learns from it. Because then what you're saving is you're saving the other 3 people on your team from making that same mistake 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, because they'll say, oh, I remember when Giacomo did that and it didn't work. So now I'm not going to do it. So sharing those mistakes and those learning lessons. And for you as a leader or somebody that wants to lead, sort of recognizing that individual success, but again, teaching the team to learn through those successes and failures as a group. So yeah, you can still have those superstar performers. There's always going to be someone that's like the best on the sales team or the best marketer. And it's not to like squash that person down or to inflate them up. It's to take the lessons that they're learning and the wins that they're having, and it's to share them equally in hopes that these small shared wins can build confidence in the rest of the team or build tactics and strategies that can work across many people instead of just 1 or 2. And another thing that she talks about, which I think is really important, is asking your team. And by the way, I'm talking about it in a work sense, but again, this could be used in a personal sense as well, in your family, in your household. When I heard this, I was like, I'm actually going to use it for both. But Amy suggests really sitting down, again, with your team or with your family and asking, what does each of us think that good looks like here? So when I say like, oh, I think we'll do well in Q4, what does well mean for me versus what does well mean for you? And so I thought that that was a really powerful question, especially when it comes to that collective competency, because it's another way to reset everybody on the same page and to sort of be able to future vision or brainstorm together, like where the team is headed and why it matters, and to align on what good looks like, and to create a shared process to get there. Because a lot of times what that question will bring up, and what Amy talks about that it brings up, is it brings up this misalignment. And that what's good for one person on the team, which might be, I don't know, we closed 5 new deals at the end of 2025, for somebody else whose goal was to close 8 new deals by the end of 2025, the person who, has their needs met might be a little more happy with the team than somebody who says, well, we didn't get to 8 and 8 was my goal. Therefore, I'm not happy with how we performed. So really getting on the same page and saying, what does each of us think that good looks like? How can we all get to that shared idea of good? So in that example, the person who said, well, 5 would be good enough for me, and the other person said, well, 8 is good for me. Is it meeting in the middle? Is it the 5 coming up to 8? Is it a shared idea of what that could be? But really getting on the same page of what that looks like together is really powerful. I think that that's something that's really good as we get to the end of the year, and as we think about rounding out 2025 and going into 2026, is drilling down on that question. So I encourage you, maybe later this week or early next week, sit down with your team, sit down with people in your personal life and say, what does each of us think that good looks like? What is a shared vision for all of us to have? I think that's really important. As Amanda is saying, consciously create and collaborate together. I think that that's really, really powerful. I also want to touch on a few things that people were saying in the chat that I'm seeing, because I think it's something I want to hold up. Christina says that if there's something simple that you can do and that can be done to lighten your day, do it first. So I totally agree with this. And I will say I also subscribe to this theory of eat the frog. If anyone has heard of that theory, eat the frog. Eat the frog basically means you take sort of the hardest thing that you have to do for the day, and you do that first. You get that out of the way first, because what sometimes we can do, I'll speak for myself as someone who is avoidant. I know there's all these different types of avoidant. There's reactive avoidant, or I don't know. I forget what type of avoidant I am, but either way, it's basically if I have something hard to do that day, maybe I have to have a hard conversation with somebody, maybe I have to present bad news to the client, maybe I have to deal with a sticky problem. What I will sometimes do is I will do small, fun tasks first. I'll be well, let me just update my QuickBooks, or well, let me do the dishes that are in the sink, or well, let me fold all the laundry right now, even though it's 8:30 in the morning. And it's no, deal with the problem, because you know what the problem is. Deal with the stickiest thing first. Don't kind of keep leaving that until the end of the day. Really lean in, eat the frog. It's gross. You don't want to do it, but just put on your big girl and boy pants and deal with the problem. And by the way, that doesn't mean you have to deal with 5 problems. I didn't say eat the frogs with an S. I said eat the frog singular. So if you have 3 or 4 sticky problems, maybe you only deal with 1. Then to Christina's point, you do something light, a little palate cleanser to do. And then you get to the next sticky problem. Or if there's a sticky problem that you can deal with the next day, to not deal with all the sticky problems all at once. I think that can be really, really good. A good way to kind of dig in and handle things. I'm glad that Christina brought that up. Brendan also offered a suggestion with, doing things a little differently. If it's running a meeting differently, he says, I love team meetings when a different person runs the meeting on a rotating basis. I love this too, Brendan. This is a super cool, easy way that to say, instead of Kim running every single Tuesday update meeting, one week it's going to be Kim, and the next week it's going to be Shelby, and the next week it's going to be Brendan, and then it goes back to Kim. I love this. It gets people involved. It's easy. It's low lift. I wanted to definitely kind of bring that up to everybody because I think that that's a good one. Simon also talks about like a good, easy way to implement change is to physically change your location. So again, stand up. Instantly, your viewer perspective has changed. Maybe you walk around the office while you talk if you're not on video. I've even been on calls, quite frankly. I was on a call last week. I was actually really impressed. I was on this Zoom call. It was like 5 other people on the call. And, we're starting the meeting and people are like chit-chatting, like, wow, how was your weekend? Well, fine. And this woman who I'd never met before, who was on the Zoom, she kind of very hit me with it, very blunt, and says to everybody in the meeting, hi, I will not say her name, but hi, it's Teresa. I'm excited to meet you guys. I have to be honest, this is my 3rd Zoom meeting in a row. I'm going to go off video and I'm just going to walk around my office a little bit because I need to like move my legs, and then I'll come back on video towards the end of the call. And I had never met this person before. And I was like, yes, queen, we love somebody with boundaries. I mean, by the way, I didn't care. I was like, I don't need to see your face. I would like to, but I didn't need to. So yeah, she went off video. I don't know. She walked around. Who knows what she was doing? Her laundry, maybe. And probably like 15 minutes before the call ended, she was back at her desk, same. It wasn't like she had a workout outfit. It was like she went to a Pilates class and came back, sat at her desk and came back on video and finished the meeting. So I say all that to, because Simon's point of like changing your location, I think that can be really, really great. Thank you, David, who said he's been away for a year. I'm so happy you're back. Thank you for coming back. I forgot how interesting your topics are. Well, thank you, because again, we were supposed to have Amy on today, and I'm very conscious of the fact that Amy was not able to join, but I didn't want us to not have this time together. So, and I want to be respectful of our time together, because boy, oh boy, in the next couple of weeks, do we have some fun things to dig into before the end of the year. Next Wednesday, we are taking the Wednesday off because here in the United States, we have Thanksgiving. And I am thankful for you, and I'm thankful for all of our Wednesdays together. So I will be making apple pie. I think I might try to make a pumpkin pie this year. I don't even like pumpkin pie, but other people like it. So I'm going to give it a whirl. If you have any recipes that you're trying, please send them to me, because I'm very into like baking and cooking right now. It's like a phase. So if you have anything to send, I'm going to be trying some new recipes and inflicting them on my in-laws where we're doing Thanksgiving. So hopefully some of them are good, and hopefully I don't make anybody sick. But we will be taking next week off because I will be busy baking and cooking next Wednesday for Thanksgiving on Thursday. And then we're back at the top of December. So we have a great session coming up with Jen. We have a great section about AI that's coming up. We'll do like our goal setting. It's going to be really great. You can always see all of our sessions by going over to getcoffeewithkim.com. We'll send you a calendar invite. You can join these sessions live, or like I said, you can join them in podcast form, in listening form, while you fold the laundry or do the dishes or walk the dog. We're always here for your little listening ears to listen whenever you please. But I always like when you can join live. I wanted to give a special shout out to like Amanda and Hiromi and David and Aaron and Jeff and Christina and Brian and James and Shelby and Anand, and just we had Brendan, Elizabeth, so many great people who were able to join us today and let us in on their tips and tactics and things that work for them. So, and Scott, I really appreciate it. But hopefully you will be able to join us next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Grab a friend, not next week, sorry, 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, grab a friend. I'm biased. I think we have a super fun time here and learn a lot, but you can head over to getcoffeewithkim.com. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the week and that you really sink in and try some of these methods from Amy. I know I'm going to try those 20-minute sprints here later today. I have some proposals to finish. So if you try any of these methods, I would love to know about it. Write me a message on whatever social channel you want, but I'd love to sink in and do this homework with you this week. So until then, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so thankful for you. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you have a beautiful Thanksgiving with your family and friends. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving because you're joining us from India or Milan or somewhere else that's fabulous, just know that I am so thankful and grateful for you for joining, and I really appreciate you being here. So until then, I will see you in 2 weeks on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, my friend, see you soon.